It's an exciting time, the intersection of science and spirituality, because we are delving into how thoughts and intentions are now the driving force into what impacts our overall health. Sound frequency and therapy really is the modality in which vibration and intention describes how energy moves and how consciousness directs it.
My guest holds a Master's of Science in Chemistry and Clinical Science and has worked in immunochemistry, microbiology, and vaccine sciences. She's owned multiple businesses and now performs sound healing in hospitals and has recently published her first book, Activating Our 12-Stranded DNA, Secrets of Dodecahedral DNA for Completing Our Human Evolution Through Inner Traditions. I'm so proud to present Ruslana Remennikova as she discusses how science, spirituality, intention intersect and how this relates to you. So these days you research 12-stranded DNA and you publish a book on the topic. Tell me what has taken you from this journey from working in pharmaceuticals, in the pharmaceutical industry, and now you do healing in hospitals.
Thank you for that question. It's a very meaningful path that I chose intentionally. So the path that led me to explore this concept of the 12-stranded DNA, the legendary 12-stranded DNA, as it's emerging more as a novelty now, is deeply rooted in my personal transformation and deep inner work. My journey began with a deep personal loss when my father passed away in 2016 after completing an Olympic level triathlon, which is, for many people who probably are unaware of, it's a quarter distance of an Ironman. And we were both very passionate about doing our first triathlon together because we were both in a place of not feeling unwell. We were deeply, I would say, broken and have come to a point in our life where we were seeking healing. So we chose to go down the path of physical healing, which is where most healing begins, is on the physical realm. And at the time, as I mentioned, I was going through a challenging emotional period. I was leaving a marriage and grappling with grief. And I was actually the person who approached my father about going down this path of why not try doing a triathlon. So pushing myself physically helped me process my grief, which is a really important topic in our realm for everyone. We all carry grief, whether it's personal grief, tribal grief, Gaia grief. So I really wanted to explore what it meant to process the grief through physical healing. Okay. So after my father passed away, I decided to continue this journey where I wanted to honor his life by doing an Ironman, a legitimate full distance Ironman. And wow. A year to his passing, I did Ironman Australia, which is sort of a separate story of its own, but to make it a very short story, I became an all-world athlete when wow. I finished Ironman Australia, which is how I was processing my grief with my father's death, the marriage that I was leaving. And in that process, there were so many doors that started in my inner transformation that started to unlock. I started to feel happy and joyful, and also this innate intuitive ability of there's more to me that I want to know more about. And I started to make those connections within. So when I came back to the States, I decided to leave my corporate science career and explore what does this potential mean and within me. So I decided to open a juice truck, which was my first entrepreneurial venture. It was a small business that was focused on health and wellness, which eventually expanded into a coffee shop. And during these years, I felt a sense of freedom and creativity that I had never experienced in my corporate life. And the business was thriving for a couple of years. It felt like everything was soaring. And then COVID-19 pandemic hit. And like so many others, I felt that I needed to make some changes because of the uncertainty that the pandemic was to bring. So in this time, I began to realize that there was another inner shift taking place, a kind of activation that went above and beyond what could be explained by traditional science. To me, I wanted to link a deeper sense of connection, not just to myself, but to the greater potential of the human experience. So after I decided to close my coffee shop, I went back to corporate and I started to write this book at the same time.
See.
And
so have you
yes.
said that you were, you wanted to find if there's something more. Have you always been spiritual or curious about spirituality, or were you just like, hey, this, in my father's passing, there's just got to be more to life, and let me dive in and see what else is going on outside of the corporate world?
It was a mixture, I think, of everything. The passing of my father kind of sparked this forced awakening in me, while at the same time I felt that healing that my father and I experienced together when we were training for our first little triathlon together. So when he had passed on, I remembered that healing and I wanted to keep to it. And so that was more of the on the spectrum, that was sort of on the lower side of the investment of time and energy that I put into this healing journey. But after my father died, I really went, I would say, double full time into healing myself physically. So my body was actually feeling very activated. It felt as if I had, the former me had sort of passed away and the new me was rebirthed. And
Wonderful.
I wanted to explore more of that potential, not so much the new me, but more of that rebirth process, which each one of us experiences or has the potential to.
Has the potential to. Yes, absolutely. Well, tell me a little bit about, I understand, tell me a little bit about the 12-strand DNA and how is it relevant to people today regarding, healing work?
When people talk about the 12-stranded DNA, which is something that has been passed down to us generations, we're talking about thousands of years ago.
Okay.
They're not referring to the physical double-stranded DNA that's studied in biology. Instead, it's more of a symbolic or energetic model that suggests that we have layers, dimensions of potential, which is either spiritual, emotional, intuitive, or all of the above, that go beyond what we currently understand. And we know based off of the current model that the traditional two strands are our basic biological blueprint. However, the fuller model, which I present in my book as the dodecahedral model, dodecahedral simply comes from or stems from the Platonic solid Plato introduced 2,500 years ago into something that's a lot more higher in capacity, which I think goes beyond expanded perception, deep intuition, emotional intelligence, and our connection to the consciousness of our soul. And why does this matter today? Why is it relevant? Is because I believe that we are all seeing and witnessing sort of a turning point in our humanity. We're being invited, actually pushed at this time to evolve, not just technologically, but in how we relate to ourselves and each other and this planet in the cosmic system. So the 12-stranded concept it offers a framework for our inner evolution. And it's about activating the dormant parts of ourselves that want to live more consciously, more creatively, and more compassionately. So whether it's a literal energetic activation or a metaphor for expanded awareness, the message is still the same. We are more than what we've been conditioned to believe, and now's the time to embody that truth.
I hear a number of people these days, they refer to things actually changing or helping people out on the cellular level. Is that kind of come into play here? Is that kind of what they're referring to? That, our DNA, there is a core part of it, but there are other portions of it that actually can be kind of manipulated in some fashion from intent or sound healing or, various different types of healing methods. So is that fairly accurate when people are like, hey, this actually will benefit you or change you on a cellular level? Is there truth in that statement?
There is truth in that statement. Our cells, our whole body, our soul, we are constantly listening. And we know that. We know that because traditional science teaches us of epigenetics. Epigenetics is the study of how our environment stimulates our DNA. And on a holistic, integrative level, we know that our cells resonate to sound, to water, and to emotions, intentions, and vibration. So yes, the answer is yes.
So cool. Now, is it Bruce Lipton? Is he the father of the term epigenetics? Or is he just kind of popular and known for his topic on the subject?
I think that there are a number of giants in the world of epigenetics.
Okay.
However, the biology of belief is a very core and fundamental book from Dr. Bruce Lipton that helps us explore how beliefs and consciousness impact our biology and how this can be an activating, how this activates our latent potential in our genome. Yes, I do believe he is a giant in this field.
So he didn't originate it, but he really did bring it to the forefront.
Yes.
It's a great book. It's one of the first I dove into, trying to understand some of the weirdness that I experienced, really only like 15 years ago on my 40th birthday. Because I didn't believe in a lot of this stuff, and something changed me and I couldn't explain it. So I dove into things like, Biology of the Belief by Bruce Lipton to help me at least try and put some understanding around some of the weirdness I was, experiencing.
And what did you experience, if you don't mind me by asking?
Well, it was actually energy work, Reiki and muscle testing. And I think muscle testing is actually talked about in the biology belief that he didn't, he went to his chiropractor. His chiropractor used muscle testing on him. And from there forward, he kind of flip flopped his studies to try and figure out how muscle testing actually works. But for me, um, muscle testing also opened my eyes to, my body having a better understanding than I consciously have of my body, of things that are good for my body. And it was a very interesting ride. It was at a Tony Robbins event, kind of back behind the scenes. I wasn't a participant. I was actually a crew member, but it was just one thing after another. And I was exposed to Reiki for the first time, and different lectures that Tony Robbins actually brought in to speak on energy medicine, that he would provide for his crew members, his support team. But actually, it was still a little bit too weird at that time to present those same speakers to his participants. Now he does present, energy healers to his participants, but 15 years ago, it was a little bit too weird. Mm-hmm. So he didn't. But yeah, so I just tried to make some sense of all of this. And that's one of the books that I really dove into. I really enjoyed.
Absolutely. And it's an exciting time for the intersection of science and spirituality, because we are delving into how thoughts and intentions are now the driving force into what impacts our overall health. Interestingly, and we have been exploring this for decades, actually through the placebo effect, where the example of how our thoughts and beliefs have showed how our genes are expressed. It isn't until now where other influencers like Dr. Joe Dispenza are bringing this forward and giving an example of how something like the placebo effect actually is a tool of how our thoughts and beliefs do respond and turn on genes that are related to healing and reducing pain relief and other positive outcomes that are based on our mindset.
To get, I guess, a little off topic, I mean, you were talking about things like you had pictures of a energy healer with energy actually being like projecting from his hands, and this energy emitting from this healer's hands. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about that a little bit, because that's pretty fascinating, and what tools he uses to actually read that type of energy?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Rhine Research Center has a very fascinating study that they've explored. It's on their website and it's public for anyone to read it. There was a study done to explore how healers have the ability to actually use energy, aka their light, to remotely heal other people. And it's a very fascinating study. Let's see. John Kruth, who is the PI of the study, brought in healers to a dark room in his laboratory, and he studied the emission of their light, their energy. And what he found was that the light, actually, each person has an ability who is doing the healing work to basically emit the baseline, the base level of light to another location. So he found that sometimes those light particles can travel from 0 to 400,000, which is very high. That's more of the higher threshold. But he
So,
used
so what is that? What does the 400 stand for exactly? The 0 to 400.
how much light that is produced from each person, the energy that is healing. That's what I mean by light. It's
Okay.
energy that is healing another living organism. And he
Wow.
used a photo multiplier tube in order to do that. Interestingly, there is a well known subject. His name is Ed Edwards. He is known, he's studied, and a subject to being a very effective energy medium
Hmm.
who is able to send energy to other people. And I'm actually a testament to that. I was fortunate to experience what that would feel like with Ed. He's also
Okay.
kind of dubbed the alien brain because he is able to sort of turn on that ability instantly.
Wow.
And he sends energy to his subjects. This is one of the subjects that's able to emit that higher threshold of energy to
I see.
other people. Well, interestingly, this lab also has a remote lab in Italy as well. And so they were able to capture how the healers who are in North Carolina are subjectively and also kind of mysteriously, they're able to calculate and quantitate their energy from North Carolina into Italy in real time.
So how do they quantify that? It,
I believe through the PMT method that is listed on their website, their
wow.
photo multiplier tube. So
Now, remote healing actually is becoming more of a commonplace. Um, so, I mean, like distance Reiki is a fairly common thing these days. Um, but it's nice to see that it's actually being kind of captured and measured um, in a more scientific sort of a method.
remote healing is actually an accepted mode of therapy by the NIH. Actually,
Really?
what stemmed from remote healing is actually the interdisciplinary practice of biofield therapy, which was introduced by 1992 by the NIH, which branched from remote healing. They had to have a separate sort of discipline in order to distinguish the difference between remote healing and biofields.
Okay. Can you yeah, can you tell me what the difference is exactly? I'm not quite following that.
Yeah, so remote healing is a type of energy work.
Mhm.
It's where one person is able to send energy to a non local subject.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be a very long distance, or it can be a very long distance.
Right.
Our biofield is the electromagnetic field around us that has the potential to impact other living organisms in our environment.
Okay.
So the distinguishing factor in this is intention. So when we want to treat or to send medicine, this is kind of the whole point of energy healing remotely, is the healers are using the vibration, the intention, the meaning behind vibration to a non-local subject. Whereas in the biofield therapy, it can be intentional, but it can also be non-intentional as well. Have you ever felt when you're around someone who is very positive and uplifting that your energy field actually
So the
changes?
biofield is more local oriented versus intention work can be non-local. Is that kind of the crux of it?
Correct. Yes,
Okay.
that is
So the
one.
biofield would be, I mean, could an example of that be, well, of course, you have good energy with people surrounding you or bad energy that you were kind of stuck, you started talking about that, but like sound therapy, if you're in a room with bowls, for example, is that considered like a biofield type of healing
That is.
versus
Mhm.
remote Reiki or remote intent or even prayer, as far as I see it, is more of uh, a remote type of healing.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So
Yes.
biofield is local and remote healing is potentially remote. Am I getting that
Biofield.
right?
I wouldn't. I wouldn't limit biofield to simply being remote,
Okay.
just because our energy is it's limitless. It's all about the intention that we have.
I
So,
see.
um, while some people might disagree with me, I also think that if we limit what the biofield means, then we're sort of eliminating the quantum properties of our existence, of our electrical, magnetic, of our ability to time. We're sort of limiting ourselves to time and space in our ability to heal.
I see.
Um, but yes, the biofield is sort of this um, the essential force that exudes from us.
Like your aura.
Our sort of aura, correct?
Okay. Oh,
I wouldn't officialize it as the aura,
okay.
but it is a sort of a biological
Energetic field.
infrastructure, yes, of our
Okay.
field. Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. That makes
And
sense.
and it's relatively a new concept. I mean, it's been about 30 years, but still, how many studies that have been done to understand the biofield is considerably less than the pharmaceutical industry, for example. So we're still trying to unravel exactly what is the biofield. But it's exciting that it's been accepted as a legitimate field in 1992. Yeah.
And you said it, and NIH recognizes it.
Hmm. Yes.
Wow, that's fantastic. That's great.
It really is. Yes. And I did an experiment with, I was very interested in the biofield concept, specifically in how two people can co-create sort of a universal biofield using their two individual authentic biofields. What would that look like? And there's so much technology, light technology out there now that can scan a person's energy field using it's called Kirlian photography, where they use the electromagnetic differences and sort of
But is it
measure.
really? I know that technology's been around since the 50s, correct?
Right.
And I go to some of these events, like Pathways had,
Mhm.
I believe this. I don't know if is that actually Kirlian technology or is that something else that kind of demonstrates a similar sort of. I mean, it shows the biofield or aura or whatever sort of label you want to put on it. It shows changes within the body. Um, but what type of technology is that? I've always been kind of a little skeptical of that.
It's it, you captured it exactly. It shows us the changes in the energetic field. Now, when I saw the BioWell, I know that it was based
Hmm.
upon the Kirlian photography system that examines the changes in the electromagnetic field. Good for you for spotting that main word is the changes. I wanted to actually examine that in real time. Is how can using a biofield that I think it was Thornton is the founder of that BioWell.
The BioWell? Yeah,
Hmm.
so I have some experience with the BioWell. It's pretty fantastic.
Hmm.
I, got a reading with the biowell, stuck my fingers in there, got a aura, or showed where my energy was in different parts of my body, and then I actually got a treatment. In this particular case, I had went to the Harmonic Egg, which is a sound and light therapy chamber. It's
Mm-hmm.
pretty impressive, big egg that you hop in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Kind of like Mork and Mindy. Hop in the egg and you get your treatment, and you hop out. And then I got scanned again using the biowell, and it was a night and day difference. It really was. And and I felt good afterwards. And I'm always trying to kind of keep tabs on myself, trying, because sometimes you expect to feel better when you do a certain thing. So afterwards you feel better and you're like, okay, what is that, placebo, or what is that exactly? But I will tell you, for the following couple days, when I woke up in the morning, I woke up laughing. And I'm not a morning person. I don't wake up laughing. But those couple days following, I just felt wonderful. So there was a real thing there. And that's all unexpected. So that was not a placebo thing, because I was not expecting that to happen. And yet there I was. It was really a fantastic experience, and to be able to see the changes demonstrated on the BioWell device showing my energetics, that was very cool.
I think I think it's legitimate and valid. The energy transformations that you can visually and aesthetically see using the biowell. I have heard fantastic comments about the Harmonic Egg, which is introduced by Linda Edwards.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to see exactly if it's possible to, for two people's combined biofield, can it be changed through thought? Can it be changed through intention? And so I explored that with actually Dr. Bernard Beitman. We both met up, and we decided that we're going to meditate together using the biowell on us and examine what goes on, the energy around us, the aura around us, using the changes, right, that you mentioned.
Right.
And interestingly, so we've done it several times, and each time that we stood together and we meditated together, our sort of shared field in the center would just turn white, completely white around us.
Wow.
Yes. And the best part about this is the practitioner who was videoing us using the BioWell software. She took a snapshot of us, a picture, and she didn't realize that her sound was on. So Bernie and I both heard the snapshot.
Okay.
And what happened after that is it disoriented us. We lost sort of focus in that moment because we heard that sound. So our aura changed.
You were thinking, oh, she's taking pictures, and it was kind of a restriction, I guess, maybe of your aura in that moment.
It changed our focus. So we no longer had that aura change. We didn't have that whiteness around us. It actually went back to what it was from the very beginning. Yes.
Wow. That's really cool.
It is. That's so
really cool.
So I'm actually going to be practicing now with the BioWell, because I think that there is a lot of potential in integrating the concepts of the biofield and sound healing together, and examining how it can clear out any blockages in the body.
That's amazing. Yeah, I was thinking about getting a hold of one myself, because I try different therapies because I'm curious. That's why I'm doing this, because I'm just curious and I try different things. And so I would love to have one of those in my back pocket. So, on my way there, or right before I actually get the treatment, I do the BioWell device, and I get kind of a reading, and then I do the therapy or whatever it is that I happen to be doing, and then I get to test it afterwards to see if there's, to see what's occurring.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's got a little price tag, so I opted out of it, but it would be kind of a neat idea. Now there is this other app, like I mean, it's right on your phone. And you speak into it, and evidently based on the way you speak, the vibration in the words that that you present, it has a very similar reading as the BioWell. Um, are you at all familiar with that? I've heard great things about it, but it's again with so many of these things, it's hard to get your head around. But yeah, so it's an app, you speak into it, and based on the vibration of your voice, it says, it has a very similar reading output as the BioWell does, but you don't have to be there in person.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I've heard great things about that too. And it's less expensive because it's just an app that you put on your phone.
That's
that's quite a stretch for me. But again, I talked to a couple reputable people, and I'm like, it seems to be accurate. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'll give it a whirl.
Yeah, I'm actually curious about the stimulus in this equation and how the algorithm of the stimulus was synthesized, because that is the way our genes are effectuated, is through stimulus. So there has to be a very precise algorithm behind this speaking device. Is how is it prone to show a result based off of the sound of or frequency of a person's voice, which we can moderate at any time. That's what is interesting to me about this. And I'm a scientist, so I try to keep my mind open, but I also have a lot of discernment in that.
Absolutely.
As well. Yeah.
Well, so you do a lot of sound therapy or music therapy. Which is it you do with sound bowls, and what's the difference between the two?
I work specifically with sound therapy. Sound
therapy. Okay.
Utilizes the exact frequency of an instrument to produce a physiological response. Currently, there is no traditional or official form of licensing for this modality. And that's the best part about this, is that
there's no restrictions.
There's no restrictions at the moment. With music therapy, it is a developed field. It is the gateway in how we're able to even explore what sound means in the medical system. And so music therapists are licensed, and they use a number of different tools to work with their patients. Specifically, it could be the voice, it could be playing musical instruments like the guitar, listening to music, singing. It's more of a versatile application system that's very well established. At the same time, sound therapy, although it's newer in our current times, it's a very old system that's been introduced from our ancestors thousands of years ago. But in an exciting way, it's being refacilitated now.
So it seems like music therapy is a lot more broad and not quite as specific, and yet there's more restriction on it. Whereas sound therapy, you can use a very specific tone and affect a very specific part of the body, and there's no restriction to it. That seems a little backwards to me, but I guess it's good it's that way. I don't know.
I think that there's going to be a lot more restrictions around it moving forward, especially now that biotechnology is is starting to see the promising abilities of sound therapy, and these companies are developing specific applications that are going to be available on the market. They're seeing the potential in this. So although there aren't any known sort of restrictions around it, I do think it's coming.
So you'll have to have like a license in order to hit a sound bowl in someone else's presence?
I think in the future there will be more infrastructure and framework around who can do that in a medical system. And I think recreationally, there won't be any sort of system around it, but in the future, in a clinical environment, there will be.
Okay. And I guess that makes sense to me. Because I believe you were mentioning that when you do sound work with the sound bowls, different bowls affect specific parts of the body. They kind of resonate with different parts of the body.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak on that a little bit? Can you tell me a little bit of your work in the hospitals? And you work with children a fair amount as well. Is that right?
I have worked with children before in a more of a child care facility to see how sound can bring relief, emotional relief to children. But currently I specialize more in bringing sound therapy in a hospital environment. And that's been very rewarding.
Yeah.
So with sound frequency, this field, it's all based on the premise that everything in the universe vibrates and has a resonant structure. Resonance is the ability for our body to support coherency and healing. Even though different papers, like scientific papers and research, don't specifically use the word resonance, resonance is actually really important to how cells talk with each other and amplify or de-amplify stress and regulation or dysregulation on a more scientific level. So with vibration, the collective, when we are healing via sound, we use specific frequencies to target specific areas of the body. And I think that this is a sort of an intuitive approach. We might not even realize it, but actually we are, if we listen to a bowl that has a resonant structure specifically for the throat, we might specifically resonate to that. We might like it more on one day than on the other day. I think, this is just my opinion, that it's because we inherently know what our body needs and what our body is sort of lacking in terms of needing more attunement, more alignment, more balance.
Okay.
In my practice at the hospital, what I've noticed is based off of the specific case. For example, I worked with 2 patients who had gastric cancer. Once I started to get into a comfortable playing rhythm using crystal bowls, this was the first time I've ever experienced that both patients specifically verbally isolated the bowl, specifically the solar plexus, that helped bring relief, actually physical relief. Before they were feeling very nauseated, uncomfortable, weak. And after 12 minutes of integrating that specific frequency for the solar plexus, both of them felt solace. They felt that their body had come to a complete sense of balance. And why is this important? Well, it's important not just because of the effect, but also they feel in control of their body again. They feel embodied. They feel that they're no longer sort of in the sterile environment where they are controlled by drugs and whatnot. They're actually, their anatomy and their physiology is enough. So that's one of my favorite things about this, is that using frequency, we can physiologically align our bodies into its natural rhythm, where we feel in line with life and the universe again.
So there's an interesting practice that I often experience. So most Sundays, there's a place nearby here called Realize Meditation. Every Sunday, they have many events that take place there. It's a great place. I'm going to plug them. Go Realize Meditation. But anyway, every Sunday they have sound bowls, and that's kind of, at least in my circles, it's all the rage these days. There's a lot of people that do it. He does happen to do an exceptional job of the sound bowls. But what I find so fascinating about the whole thing is that the sound bowls have a he typically has about 25 people there, maybe 30 people. And the sound bowls open up the people that are there, just like there's a heart opening that takes place.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And in those moments, or rather after this sound bowl has taken place, he then speaks to the people in the audience and gets them to open up, because they're already kind of in this place, right? It's a very kind of a healing, warming atmosphere. But it's amazing hearing just and witnessing the changes these people that takes place within these people, because they've sat with these bowls for about 45 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're open to talk about anything and everything, and sometimes like revolutionary thing, like just aha moments occur. Just really seeing what the bowls do to this group of 25 people, and witnessing how they're able to open up after this experience is extremely healing. And then Phil just kind of pokes and prods just a little bit to bring out a little bit more, and it's just a very healing way to spend a Sunday morning.
It really is. Sound frequency and therapy really is the modality in which vibration and intention describes how energy moves and how consciousness directs it. Biologically, we know that the body is highly responsive to internal and external signals. We know this because we've seen how sound can regulate brainwaves, specifically brainwave entrainment, neurotransmitters, and actually impact hormones as well. It is a very physiological and biological experience. And again, as we mentioned from the beginning of our talk, our cells are listening. It is a whole body experience. And in this environment, we are creating, we are co-creating through our thoughts, emotions, using the sound to influence, I believe, how our genes are expressed. It really is fascinating. And one thing I wanted to mention, because I think that there is a general misunderstanding of how epigenetics works, is that our genes aren't rewritten. The 4 nucleotides aren't specifically changed. They are expressed. Those are 2 totally different concepts. When you change a nucleotide, which sound can't do, that's usually done through a mutation or a vaccine or a chemical or radiation. The beauty in how genes are expressed, or turned on or turned off. That whole idea is the gateway to how our environmental stimulus impacts how the story, our DNA, is read. I just wanted to make that distinction. Yeah, it's really fascinating. This
So
entire.
why is it that music and sound is not able to affect the part of the DNA that you had mentioned, but things like chemicals or vaccines and some other things are able to affect them? What's the
because
distinction there?
because within the model of the epigenetic mechanism, I wanted to distinguish that sound actually does not have any influence on creating a mutation within DNA. A mutation is a physical alteration of the sequence itself.
Okay.
Usually, I had mentioned radiation, viruses, chemicals, or some kind of genetic error creates these gene edits, which are different from how a gene is expressed. That all falls, that's very important under the epigenetic mechanism. And CRISPR, for example, CRISPR is a gene editing technology. The main highlight of CRISPR, or any of the factors that I mentioned, such as the viruses and chemicals, what they do is they create a cleave. They cleave the double strand, or they can nick one of the strands.
They cleave it?
Cleave it. That means it is a full cut of the DNA strand. And when that happens, the DNA strand, because it's so smart, the cells are so smart, they automatically self-program to repair, to heal. But sometimes what that does is that it can create a mutation. It creates a mutation.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So sound can't do that. Sound can't, cleave your DNA. Sound simply has the influence of turning on or turning off the gene, activating or inactivating the gene. And this happens through a couple of factors scientifically. It's called methylation. So it's when a carbon and 3 hydrogens are introduced to an area of the DNA of the sequence. That's called methylation. That's when a gene is turned off. That's basically how, if we wanted to find an analogy, it's the way that the DNA is read. When you read a story, how are you reading it? Is it with warmth, with positivity, with love, or is it in a gruesome, sort of nefarious or kind of negative way? So that's kind of the turning off of the gene.
When I hear the word methylation, I think of that seems to be a more popular word these days with nutritionists, methylated supplements. Your body, I guess maybe like you were saying, something's turned off and your body just does not process a particular supplement as easily. And so, they're saying you need to get methylated types of supplements so that your body processes it better. Is that just, are they completely different, or is that relevant in any way?
I'm not sure, but
Okay, fair enough.
basically sound can't change the nucleotides.
Okay.
It doesn't change the sequences whatsoever. But what it does do is it can reduce inflammation, it can reduce cortisol, which is the stress hormone, and it can increase immunity. So that's how a gene can be expressed. It can turn off its activators for stress, releasing anything that's chronic within the body through emotional regulation, through a physiological regulation. That's how the long-term route or pathway of how genetic mechanisms, epigenetic mechanisms, can be impacted and actually influenced using sound therapy.
And I guess that's why you do that as much as you do in hospitals these days, because you
Yes.
feel like it's a very non-invasive yet effective form of healing.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So it's interesting. We didn't really talk about the intention that much, but I do want to point out how intention is a significant part of the equation in sound therapy, not specifically just for DNA, but actually water. Water is a critical part of why intention is so profound in our bodies, because first of all, we are roughly 60 to 70% water.
Right.
Second of all, our DNA is shelled and supported by water. Water enables DNA, not just supports it. It actually is responsible for protein folding.
Okay.
And water is a memory keeper. It stores information. There has been a number of studies now showing how intention is a significant stimulus of water. One of the most known ones, scientifically speaking, is from Dr. Masaru Emoto,
Right.
who did water crystal experiments. One that I would like to talk about is a double-blind test of the effects of distant intention on water crystal foundation, which was a 2006 study done. It's published through the Journal of Science and Healing in Tokyo. Approximately 2,000 people focused on positive intentions toward water samples in California from Tokyo. Control samples were left untreated, meaning no intentions were given to them. And what happened, or what the results showed, is that the water crystals that had the formed intentions, treated with intention, actually had a higher rated aesthetic appeal in the water crystals compared to those from the control water, suggesting that the water structure actually changes with intention. It's fascinating.
Yeah. So I was going to add, you had brought that up a little bit in the lecture before. I hear the Emoto's study cited fairly often. I think the first time is that movie, What the Bleep Do We Know? And so I feel like that's the most popular one. And I was going to ask, why don't we hear more about, like, if this study is true, if this really happens, why don't we hear more about other studies that support this amazing concept?
We're starting to. For example, Veda Austin is becoming more prominent now. She is a water researcher from New Zealand. She has over thousands, maybe that's sort of a high statement, probably close to 1,000, maybe more. I don't know. She has many images showing water as a possible source of a consciousness and a memory keeper. Also, Dr. Gerald Pollack is a professor, University of Washington, I believe. His team found that water has a fourth phase called the easy phase, which has to do with how there is sort of an electrical partial charge in water. I wish I can talk more about that, but it's a little bit beyond my realm at the moment. Also, the father of homeopathy, one second.
Because that's the whole principle behind homeopathy, isn't it?
Right.
That water has a memory, And so if you
Correct.
put something in water, it memorizes it, and you can have just a very small percentage of that original something in the water, but it is there in like the mirror of what the original essence was of that something you put in that was
Correct.
supposedly a benefit. Um,
Correct. I just wanted to get his name right because it's a little complicated. Christian Friedrich Samuel Hahnemann from
okay.
the mid 1700s actually initiated this conversation. He is the father of
Wow.
homeopathy. Showed how when a biological substance is added to water and you titrate it, meaning you reduce its concentration all the way down to the last molecule of that biological substance, and then
Mhm.
possibly remove it, water will remember its spin, its shape, its structure. That is the whole foundation, like you said, of homeopathy. Water has a very extensive part in life, which I think is, like you said, overseen and understudied. I'm personally very interested in water in general. I think there's so much more to unravel, and we are mistakenly, I think, focusing too much on DNA and less on water when there's so much to be explored about water, to
Well,
explain more about DNA.
well, I feel like water might be a little easier to understand than, you know, diving into DNA. Um,
Mm-hmm.
if there's a fundamental difference in the understanding of water and how it can capture feelings or thoughts or intentions or vibrations, I think people will be able to understand that better than more easily than it affects this portion of my DNA and this, this, that, and the other. Or at least I'm speaking for myself. Weren't you passing around some pictures of kind of an example that you
Mm-hmm.
uh, tell me a
Yeah.
little bit about that because I found that fascinating. I mean, because you captured something with just a cell phone camera. Is that right?
Yes. The beautiful thing about water is, well, since we're all made of it already, um, water, we can actually have a relationship with water as a entity beside us or external of us. So we can reorient ourselves with our relationship with water, which is what I was fascinated by, and that was introduced to me by Veda Austin. I took a one on one workshop with her at the time, several years ago, and my eyes, my mind, and my heart opened when, actually, in the first 5 minutes of our session together,
Hmm.
she said, "Let me do a water reading." It was myself and another person in the virtual workshop. And she put some water in a petri dish and then put it in her freezer for about 5 or so minutes. And then she came back out with it and showed it to us. And it was this beautiful hydroglyph. It was a lotus. It was a beautiful
Wow,
flower.
that's amazing.
Yes.
Huh.
And I wanted to do that too. I wanted to start somewhere. So I got some petri dishes, and the most important thing about reorienting is acknowledging water as its own being. So I try to do that, and the first couple of times, I just saw randomness. I didn't see anything, even though
Okay.
water was showing to me already. And then with time, I just kept consistently talking with water like it's my best friend and telling it about my day. And then all of, like, over time, progressively, I started to notice that the images were starting to become more organized. They were becoming more concise and sort of easier to read,
Wow.
to understand. So,
So not only are other studies, other examples being done aside from what's his name again? Emoto?
Yes,
Emoto?
Masaru Emoto.
Thank
Yeah.
you. You're actually being able to, you know, eh, demonstrate some of those same things.
Yeah, you don't need a microscope
That's
actually.
amazing. I thought you really had to have sophisticated equipment to be able to do this.
You don't.
So why aren't we hearing more about it? I mean, we could take pictures of this sort of stuff playing around and then taking pictures with our cell phones. So why don't people understand the I mean, this whole concept seems just it's fascinating to me, and it seems like it's very important.
It's very important. And I think that the Eastern world always knew the wisdom of water. There's more studies being conducted over the healing properties of water in India. There's more
Okay.
papers there, and they're fascinating. I think that the Western world is starting to catch up and understand, probably, most definitely, there's potential in water. And that's why we are starting to see more people exploring this gateway excitingly. Um, I think that's a valid question. I recently wrote a little article on water for pathways, and they accepted it yesterday.
Wow.
I'd be happy to share that with you
I would
too.
love to. Yeah.
It was more of a rethinking what water is sort of paper.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I think you're right. Water is a one-to-one equal partner of DNA and of life itself. Even traditional cultures in ancient cosmology like Egypt and Greek, the Babylonians, they all believed that water was the first emergent structure of life. Um, and the Quran also talks about water was the first living thing on this planet. It's also recognized in the Old Testament as well, how the earth was first a formless sea of water, dark void. There's so much rich literature pointing towards water. I think hopefully we will start to do our due diligence and explore this beautiful element more.
You mentioned that when you work with clients, that there's almost a spiritual cord that goes between you two,
Mm-hmm.
and that you actually already know what they need, what needs to be addressed
Mm-hmm.
um, before you actually start that application, start your session. So clearly, you're fairly intuitive. Is that how you would identify yourself as a intuitive um, practitioner?
I I um I listen very closely and deeply.
So what are you sensing? I mean, so before you actually even give the therapy, you have a sense of what it is that's needed and how to address it.
How do I sense it? Is that the question?
Yeah, I think so. Like what do you you have this intuitive sense about what needs to be done with your person. Like how do you have that knowing? How do you sense it? What does it feel like in your body? I'm actually trying to work with a little bit less of your scientific mind and trying to get more into the
It's
your
no, it,
feeling, your sense of what you feel in your body.
yeah, it's actually a very challenging part of explaining is I'm currently working with a client and similar questions. How do I do it? And it's like having to find the words of like how you're inspired and how there's no book for it. It's like an instant transmission
Mhm.
of um, how this person is feeling, I guess in a way it's intertwining compassion, but also seeing that person's hurt, trauma, feeling it in my own body as well. Maybe
Okay.
it's possible where those biofields merge
Hmm.
and distinguish. I know myself very well, very well, and I can distinguish when something is mine and something that's not mine.
So you're an empath, and you basically pick up other people's energy, and you know when it's someone else's energy. And with that, you're like, oh, well, this is the part in the body that needs some attention, and so that's where I'm going to direct my work.
Yes. And
Okay.
yes, that is it. That is it. And also, it's part of that activation that we talked about in the very beginning is there's a spiritual death that happens on a soul ethereal plane where the soul slash ego is demolished. Now that doesn't mean that the ego doesn't fluff up or go through some other kind of human experience where it also demolishes again later in time. But over time, there's an evolution that takes place where the human becomes a little bit more aware of the environment, the self, and purpose. So that self becomes more inclined to be like the self becomes more, there's more desire, more intimacy with wanting to be the vessel more than driving what we've been conditioned with, what we want. So there's more of a selflessness that takes place. In that selflessness, there's a meditative state where information can manifest, and the desire, the enchantment, I think desire is sort of the embodiment of enchantment arises. And that's kind of where the energy healing can transmit, can emit. It's sort of, it's strange to even, I've never been asked that. Sorry.
I know. I
I'm a
figured you
little
haven't been
tripped.
asked
I'm
that.
tripping.
Yeah.
It's so important though. When I'm with people in general, in this healing space, I feel their pain. I feel where they're hurt. And in that, I don't think about my own life. I don't think about my own like obligations or duties or responsibilities. I want to simply be an uplifting but a conduit.
That's beautiful.
So it's like this sort of loop where I give by just being and allowing the energy to take place. I have done it so many times where in the beginning I was very skeptical and unsure if this is even real. So I would ask people questions and they would be biased specifically because I wanted to know if my perception or feeling is off.
Right. My first awareness of that sort of experience is when my son was, I think he was like 1. And it was very obvious to me that he was experiencing some sort of gastric discomfort, which, often happens with, babies. And I put him on my belly, and all of a sudden, I was feeling this pain in my body, where I presume he was feeling pain in his body. And I'll tell you, he he had every good reason to cry because it didn't feel good to me. Excuse me. But it was in that moment, those moments, which was shortly after I started diving into all of this stuff and realizing that maybe I'm an empath. Maybe that's why I feel weird about around certain situations or certain people. But that was kind of an aha moment when I put him on my belly and I felt what he was feeling. And I guess that's what you're doing with your people. You're very compassionate, and you're just embodying what's going on with them, and that's fantastic. Good for you.
It's also it's a very difficult position to be in because there is transfer that takes place. There's absorption.
Right.
That's very real. I've also experienced that with my partner, where he would have a specific knot or a pain in a certain part of his body, and then I would absorb it in that the same part in my body. It would leave him and it would come to me. But I know how to get rid of it. That's the thing. Sometimes things are a lot more complicated and it's not so linear when you're working with a specific patient who's a little bit more, has a little bit more of a sophisticated condition. But I think that's part of the evolution is of the collective is actually there's more risk taking, but trust and knowing how to self-heal and take care. Take care of self and take care of others. That's very important. For me, what that looks like is slowing down, right? I know that we are constantly moving forward. There's a lot of stimulus around everyone. For me, it's removal. It's taking care of the body. That's why this is a very, I really commend healers, energy healers, because there's a lot at stake. There's a lot that energy healers take on to help others.
Yeah, I would say not just energy healers, but a lot of healers out there. Or I'm sorry, I was thinking you said sound healers. Energy healers, yes,
right.
Healers in general.
Healers in general,
yes,
right?
They take on a lot of other. You got to be able to protect yourself,
right?
So I have this closing question here, if I can find it. What your thoughts are about the future of vibrational healing and Western medicine, and if you feel like they're going to merge, one's going to support, help to support the other, or if they're going to remain very separate from one another. I just kind of wanted to get your take on that general concept, because coming from someone who's worked with research in the pharmaceutical industry and now vibrational healing.
I think that vibrational medicine and energy healing are definitely going to become the future of medicine, specifically in the interest of influencing our nervous system. As the planet keeps on evolving and the frequency changes, we're going to see that our bodies, our systems are also mimicking the current frequency of our planet as well. I think we can kind of relate with what's going on already with AI technology, with the ever-evolving crazy state of our world. At the same time, we're in timeline with the plan, the cosmic, belt, the time belt. I also think that throughout history, there are an array, sort of a whole tapestry of brainwave, brainwave state and emotional patterns studies that will play a big part in how vibrational medicine and energy healing are going to be further accepted in the Western world and in consciousness studies. I think that the solfeggio frequencies are going to continue emerging. However, there will be a more distinct and evolved frequency system that will pertain to our more complex DNA molecule. That's for another time. I also think that in the future, we're going to see more energy healing into being placed into activating the dormant, the latent parts of who we are genetically and spiritually. I also think that parapsychology is going to continue rising in terms of interest, and there's going to be more grant money and more funding towards understanding more of our ability to access precognition, telekinesis, psychokinesis. I personally am very interested in synchronicities. I am very close to finishing my paper on the potential influence of sound therapy on increasing emotional sensitivity towards perceived synchronicities. I think synchronicities are a language that every person in some point in their lives will find solace and also success. The kind of piecing together a little track to success of the soul and where the soul feels destined to go. I'm personally interested. I know I talked a lot about this. I talked so much about this, but I'm so interested in seeing if there's a pattern between specific sound, like music sound frequency, and how it impacts certain genetic states. Like, for instance, in the talk we know that I gave at Pathways, I talked a little bit about HeLa, which is a cervical cell line, a cancer cell line, being ruptured by a dissonant xylophone frequency. I'm interested in seeing if there's a pattern in using specific sound frequencies or music styles or genres to disrupting certain illnesses that are predispositioned in a certain genetic state. So that's kind of where I'm currently interested.
Well, don't they use different types of frequencies for maybe isolating some cancers, or is it gallstones? Or, I thought they were using different types of frequencies to isolate issues in the body these days. Am I wrong about that?
No, I think that that seems to be, I think, the direction that will go. I think that now that scientists and clinicians are seeing the promising avenue that sound frequencies can isolate, like you said, I think that it'll be the direction that people are going to be more willing to take.
That's wonderful. Oh, in a nutshell, how would you summarize some of the important points of our discussion today?
Okay. So the 12-stranded DNA construct is going to be a visionary blueprint of the future. Sound and frequency is a modality in how our body is able to adapt to our environment, because our genes are 90 to 99% impacted by our environment.
Okay.
Vibration and intention play a significant role in our biological processes and energy healing. Water plays a tremendous role in ways that are known and unknown. And then slowing down is a way that we can listen to the field around us. And it's very important that we do that for the evolution of our mind and body and soul. That's it.
Beautiful. Thank you. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much, Lauren. I really appreciate your time, and thank you for all of the thoughtful questions.